Happy birthday to me. I'm 41 and I have come here to Phantasialand for the first time, and I've managed to just kind of dump my wife and kids into the room, and they're going to hang around there, and I'm actually going to go on something that I want to go on, which is Black Mamba. I'm just walking under it, right here under the big loop, and that's where I'm hopefully going to be in about 15 or 20 minutes. It is very wet today, and I don't even know if you can hear me.
Leute, hier wird alles zurück, ne? Hier wird alles zurück.
Getting a little bit concerned. I've not heard it go around yet, and there's some people running back the other way. Nope, never mind. The roar and sound of screams, I'm pretty sure means that it's running okay, so it did give away time as 20 minutes, so we'll see what that turns out to be.
Hier schauen wir schon. Ja, komplett da ist. Das war heute, aber heute auch 35 dran, ne? Ja, sind nur 15 Minuten länger. Das war mein Knie mittlerweile auch voll weh, ne?
A few minutes later.
Oh, I've just got off Black Mamba, and wow, not been on a new coaster since Velocicoaster, literally about a year ago. And wow, what a coaster. That is very intense. It's got a lot of vibes of Nemesis, and to it being B&M, that's why, but it's like ever so slightly more intense than Nemesis. Wow, really impressed with it. I kind of jumped on this one because it got the shortest queue, but I'm so glad I went on this one first. It was absolutely brilliant. Oh, actually I'm out of breath running around. So where I am right now, underneath the first big loop. Oh, what a first loop. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to need to go on that a few more times just to kind of size it up and get the clock to see. There's someone else about to come down now. It's very intense. Here we go. Whoa. Oh. And off they go.
So before I get into anything, I've got to address something which winds me up probably a lot more than it should, but it's the name of this park and the way people pronounce it. I've seen a lot of people pronounce it wrongly, so a lot of people will say Phantasialand, and that's just not right. The Germans pronounce it Phantasialand. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it, and as far as I'm concerned, anyone else is wrong. It's Phantasialand. Phantasialand. Well, now that I've got that off my chest, I suppose the question is why come to this park? And to be honest, it boils down to a couple of reasons, really. First is that neither myself or my wife have been to Germany before, so it's a nice one to kind of tick off the list. And also, I'd kind of seen, bits of the park on, Instagram and TikTok and all these bits, but I've never really sort of delved deep into what's there and kind of the details of everything. So it was kind of a bit of the unknown, which was kind of a bit of a novelty for me. And then when we priced it up, it was actually really well priced. So that kind of sealed the deal. And it was just kind of a case of, let's just go for it. We've heard good things about it. I'm sure it'll be good. But just, I suppose, a little bit of info about the park. It's very, very small. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But literally, the area of the park, I believe, is 69 acres, which is absolutely tiny. I mean, you think the new Universal Great Britain is what, 125 acres? So that's nearly double. But I tell you what, the use of space in this park is absolutely inspiring. There's like, apart from one little section, which I'll mention later, there's not an inch wasted. So the park is split up into 6 different lands, basically. Each has a different theme. So you have Berlin, Mexico, Africa, Mystery, China, and Fantasy. And do you know what? They're all done really, really well. Each one kind of has like a main ride, and the theming in it is just so detailed. I was really shocked by it, to be honest. It's probably the closest that you can get to like Disney or Universal without being Disney or Universal. It's really difficult to get across how detailed these lands actually are without being there. I'll do my best to try and explain it, but to be honest, I would say just go. So for this trip, we stayed for 3 nights, and with that you get 3 days of park tickets, plus you get like I think they call it a quick pass, and it's basically like a fast pass for one of the main rides. I will put up a picture of what it looks like so you can kind of see. And then for your 4th day, so after your last night, you can also request a 4th day of park tickets for free, but you do have to ask at reception for that. So we stayed in Hotel Matamba, which is the African one. And one of the interesting things about the hotels in this park is that the on-site hotels are literally in the theme park. So you have your own dedicated entrance into the theme park. Very easy to nip back to the room. There's kind of, just a guy who checks your ticket and gives you a UV stamp on your arm. One of the things which was really interesting was that there's no security checks, no bag checks or anything. Been a long time since I've been to a park with none of that. Kind of really refreshing. It means that you can get into the park in literally like 20 seconds and you're in. I suppose, seeing as our hotel was in Africa, we might as well take you around Africa first. Obviously, you've already seen my reaction to Black Mamba, which is the B&M inverted coaster. Having thought back on it, I still love it. I would say that, and I know this is going to upset people, but genuinely, I think it's a better ride than Nemesis. I'm a big fan of Nemesis, but I really do think it's better. It's very reminiscent. You're going through canyons. You've got some of the same moves. Like the big loop is very, very reminiscent. The station is weirdly similar as well. But yeah, I absolutely love that ride. To be honest, in Africa, there's not that much else. There's kind of an adventure trail for kids, but a lot of it is just kind of shops and restaurants and things. And yeah, I feel like it needs kind of something else in there. To be fair, when you look at the map, there's not really much room to put anything else in there. So it's very well themed. Like I say, I can't say that enough, to be honest. And I'm sorry if I sound like a parrot when I say that, but genuinely, the theming's blown me away. And then next to Africa, we have Mexico. Now, in a weird way, this is actually possibly my favourite land. I'm a big kind of Mexican fan anyway. Like, I love Mexican food. I love Mexican drinks. Anyone who knows me knows that wherever I go, my drink of choice is a margarita, preferably frozen. So Epcot has my heart for that. But the whole land is just fun. It's got this amazing soundtrack throughout it, and it just sounds like it's everyone having a party. It's so well themed as well. And again, apologies for that, but when you go into the middle of the land and you have Chiapas, the big log flume there, it's almost like a favela all around it. It's like it's a bit like a canyon that's just filled with buildings, and it feels like a real live place. It's done so well. I absolutely love it. The food there was really nice, to be fair. Weirdly, they do sell pizzas as well. I think that's just to cater for the theme park market, to be honest. It's not really Mexican pizza or anything. It's literally just pizza. But obviously, the big ride that you've got to talk about there is Talocan. And wow, that is intimidating when you see it. Just watching it go round, and the soundtrack of Talocan is absolutely brilliant. Do you know what? I just want to give a big shout out, actually, because all of the lands have fantastic soundtracks. All the rides have great soundtracks. It really kind of steps it up a notch, and I've weirdly found myself listening to it on Spotify since I came home, and like some of them are just absolutely great.
Holy Jesus Christ, I've just been on Talocan for the first time, and that is, I'm not even kidding, that's like the most intense 5 seconds when you're spinning round after, I don't even know what to call it, but that is just absolutely mind-bogglingly intense. Just the G-force when you're spinning around is like nothing I've ever experienced. It's that bad. The cover's coming off my phone. What else can I say except wow?
So obviously, as you can tell by that clip, I think my brain was completely fried from Talocan. I really enjoyed it, but honestly, that's one of those rides where I could not do that many times at all. It absolutely sozzled my brains, and I mean that in a good way, but it's a bit much for me. I think it's because I'm getting a bit older now. I seem to be a lot more susceptible to motion sickness and disorientation, so I do have to be a bit more careful, but I really enjoyed it. And then obviously we have, as I mentioned earlier, Chapas Dawasaban. This has got to be close to be taking the prize for most lunatic-inspired log flume ride in the world. Before this, I'd have said Journey into Atlantis at SeaWorld Orlando, because that ride doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's really fun. This kind of does make some sort of sense, but you go on it and it's kind of like a weird, crazy Mexican Day of the Dead Cinco de Mayo disco for most of it. You go forwards, you go backwards, you go sideways. Like, who thought of that? And then you come to the steepest log flume drop in the world, which I've got to be honest, really reminds me of Dudley Do Right's Ripsaw Falls, with the way it kind of goes down and back up. I went on that and came off pretty wet, to be honest. I did have my coat on, but the sun came out for that moment. I will always refuse a poncho. Like, I don't see the point. What's the point in going on a wet ride if you're going to have a poncho? Doesn't matter what the weather is. If you don't want to get wet, don't go on it. Just leave ponchos at home. If I had my own theme park, I would ban ponchos. But I tell you what, I really loved that ride. I only did it once, and that's purely because when I went, the weather was a little bit hit and miss. It was warm, but there was, a fair bit of rain for a couple of days, and I just didn't want to get wet again. I'll be honest, I made an amateur mistake. I only took one pair of trainers, and there's not really much to dry in the room. There's a hairdryer, but there's no radiators or anything. So it was a tactical gamble that I did it once, and I was happy with that. The other crazy ride is Colorado Adventure. So my wife warned me about this, and I'm really glad that she did. She basically told me that a lot of people have said that it's the most intense mine train there is anywhere in the world. And I kind of took that with a bit of a pinch of salt, and I probably should have listened to her a little bit more. So my daughter, she is nearly 6, and she's tall enough to go on it, but she can get scared quite easily if in the right circumstances. So she's okay on most roller coaster rides. It's more if there's something where it's like tunnels and darkness. It's where she doesn't know what's going to happen. That's what she doesn't like. And there is a dark section on this. Kind of the ride is split up almost into 3 sections, and the middle section is pretty much all dark. She actually really, really enjoyed it. She was loving it. She came off it and wanted to go straight back on with my wife, and she basically did. And yeah, she kept wanting to go back on it again and again and again. But I tell you what, those people aren't kidding. It is massively intense. That is more intense than a lot of roller coasters. And I absolutely applaud them for it. I think it is a wonderful ride. It is so long as well. It's very well done. It's definitely the best mine train ride in the world. I'm sorry, Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland Paris. I'm sorry, Big Thunder Mountain at Magic Kingdom. There's not really a battle between you two anymore. It's Colorado Adventure. That's the best, hands down. If you haven't been on it, if you disagree with me, I think you haven't been on this ride. So swinging back to China, there's kind of really only 2 rides here. One is Fengju Palace, which annoyingly, it was the only ride in the park I didn't get on. And it's basically because on the few times that we were going to go and do it, it was down. It seemed to be the only ride at the park that had any real downtime, to be honest. There was that and Mouse au Chocolat, which I'll come to later. Fengju Palace, it's very much like a Chinese-inspired hex. So I don't feel like I'm missing out too much. I would have been curious how the layout was and, you know, kind of the theming all around it. And then, by the way, I've got to apologise. If any of my pronunciations are terrible, I'm so sorry. I'm doing my best. The other ride which they have there is Geister Rickshaw. And it's kind of like a ancient Chinese mythological haunted mansion. So you go on, I think they're meant to be rickshaws, but they basically look like doom buggies from Haunted Mansion. And you kind of go around and there's different scenes showing different, you know, stories from Chinese mythology. Some of them are done quite well. Some of them are really showing their age. But I think the thing I found a bit weird, and I'm not sure if this was an issue with it or whether it's always like this, there didn't seem to be really like any background music or narration, like, you know, in English or German. There was nothing. So there was nothing really to tell you what the story was, what was going on. It was just kind of a bit, I don't want to say confusing, but I didn't really know what was going on. A little bit of a warning for younger kids, it is very dark in there. There's not really much that's that scary, but if your kids have an issue with darkness, just be aware. You might want to go on it first just to check it out and then maybe take them on. To be honest, I never saw the ride time above 10 minutes for this. And then moving on to Mystery. Whew, I'll be honest, there's a lot to talk about in this land. So we'll start with what I think is... We'll basically start low down and then build ourselves up. So let's look at Reich. I think it's Reich. It might be Rake. I don't know. I never actually heard anyone pronounce it. So let me know if I'm wrong, but I think it's Reich. So it's a family boomerang coaster. It's meant to be the fastest one in the world. Again, took my little girl on it. She absolutely loved it. For me, I thought what was there was good. Way too short. Just seems like it's over so fast. It needs to be like double the length, really. I know that I'd like massively alter the kind of the throughput, but yeah, that's all I can say. It's really disappointing because it's so short. Then next we have RiverQuest. So let's see what I thought to that.
So I've just got off RiverQuest and I'm surprisingly kind of dry actually, which was good news. I think the theming of it is absolutely brilliant. I'm just going to see it up there. Really kind of innovative. I've not been on a kind of a rapids ride, but where the rapids isn't really the main point of the ride. It's all about the, I'm not even quite sure what to call them, but it's almost like the flumes part of it. Quite enjoyable, but not much really to it apart from that, so it's probably one and done for me. Some poor girl got dumped on at pretty much every single point in the ride and she came off absolutely dripping wet, so at least it wasn't me. In case you can't tell, I have... Oh, Matt's breath coming out of there. I have just gone into the Q4 Mystery Castle. I like a good ride like this. Doctor Doom's Fear Falls, one of my guilty pleasures, so we'll see how this compares.
A few minutes later.
So, just come out of Mystery Castle. Obviously, I've just queued up for that. It's quite interesting. Like, the theming is done really, really well. It's a great kind of spooky castle atmosphere. Except very dark in the queue. It seems to be a thing about this park is that loads of the queues are dark, and I don't have the best night vision, but I seem to struggle, and I end up going around like trying to not walk into the walls or fall downstairs. But the ride itself, I do love like ejector seat kind of rides. I like drop towers. My one criticism with them is always the same thing, and it's I just wish they were longer. I know that Mystery Castle does have a second cycle. I think people call it Misery Castle, which runs from some point in the afternoon. So I suppose my tip here is, if you really like it, go on in the afternoon and hopefully you'll get the long cycle. It's my last day here. Hopefully I'm going to have time to come back and give it another go. But if not, I'm fairly happy with that.
So an interesting little thing is that I didn't get a chance to go on it again. However, I did kind of force my wife to go on it, and she's not the biggest fan of drop towers. She went on later on in the afternoon and we compared what had happened, kind of compared the two different cycles. And from what we can tell, they were exactly the same in the morning and the afternoon. So I don't know, do they still do the two different cycles? If anyone knows, please let me know. I'd be really interested because I would have liked to have gone on the longer cycle. And then we come to what I consider the crown jewel of Phantasialand. It's what I think is by far and away the best ride there, Taron. Even though it's in Mystery, it's kind of in its own separate little section called Klugheim. And it's very much like a Viking village in a canyon with big stone kind of cliff edges all around you. Really, really well themed. It kind of gives me vibes of How to Train Your Dragon. Tell you what, you go into this land and it is so noisy in there. The noise of the launches on Taron is just all you can hear pretty much. Which incidentally, just as a side note while I'm mentioning it now, the sound design and deadening of this park is absolutely unbelievable. It is an engineering masterpiece. I've been led to believe that kind of Phantasialand and Alton Towers have some similar challenges in, which case they don't really want to have ridiculously huge rides towering above everything, and they've got to keep the noise limits down because there's basically people who live nearby. And whatever they've done with some of these lands, so Klugheim and Rookburgh, which I'll mention later, are two of the best ones, but if you are stood right outside the land, you cannot hear the ride. Maybe just like the tiniest little bit, but you can't hear the rides going from inside. It's absolutely wonderful what they've done. Back to Klugheim and Taron.
So I've not long got off Taron, and I've got to say it's the best ride of the park. Very, very reminiscent of Velocicoaster, which it built a couple of years before, and you can kind of see where Universal have said, we want something like that, but we want a few extra bits in it, like big top hat makes a big difference. It's very smooth, it's very fast, and absolutely love it. I think it's probably one of the best coasters in Europe. I'd still be torn between that and Smile. I mean, I'm always going to have a soft spot for that, but I'll see what happens on my kind of next couple of rides on it. I did manage to get on the back row for my first ride, so obviously at max intensity, so I'm quite happy with that, and we'll see what the next rides bring.
So for my first ride on Taron, I managed to just luckily get the back row, so super intense, absolutely brilliant ride. It's very, very similar to Velocicoaster. It's got some great launches, it's got lots of long swooping turns, it's got loads and loads of airtime. It must be, I reckon, at least 5 instances where I'm lifted off my seat. The music's pumping as you're going round, and it's like spaghetti when you look at the track. You're in and out and in and out all over the place. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. And then I only rode it one more time, believe it or not, on my last day, and here's what I thought of it.
So I've just come off Taron for the second time. Managed to bag a front row for this one. Worked out really well actually, because the queue time said 20 minutes, and as I joined, it kind of went up to 30. But just as I was getting to the station, you kind of choose between rows 2 to 8 and then the front row, with the front row obviously being a bit of a longer wait. Kind of managed, like I said, managed to time it absolutely perfectly, and only got on one train slower than if I was in the regular queue. So absolutely spot on. Front row, not quite as intense as the back row, but so much more fun. I really enjoyed that. It's the best ride I've been on since I've been here. Saved it to the last day, but it just got me thinking, which do I prefer, Taron or Velocicoaster? And honestly, right now, I don't know if I could say, because that was absolutely brilliant. I think it's just missing one little element to make it something that shines throughout the ride, like Velocicoaster has the top hat or the Mosasaurus roll. Here, there's amazing stuff, but there's no inversions. I don't think it needs them, to be honest, but I think a top hat would just literally be the cherry on the cake. One thing that I didn't mention about Taron was that it was kind of the sweetest thing I'd ever seen. There was this old guy getting on, and he must have been late 70s, early 80s. He's the oldest person I've ever seen on a roller coaster, and he sort of needed help getting in. And do you know what? He was just smiling and loving it. Gave him a thumbs up on the way out of the station, and he just kind of smiled back at me, and it's just really heartwarming. The girl I was sat next to was actually absolutely petrified. Didn't speak any English. But you know what? I managed to get her to hold her arms up for the entire ride, so that was absolutely well worth just trying to communicate with her. Everyone here is so friendly. Absolutely love it here at Phantasialand. Don't want to go away. Don't want to go home today, but I suppose my time is up.
And I've been thinking, ever since I came back from Germany, of do I prefer Taron or Velocicoaster? And I think it's not an easy question, and I might delve into this in a kind of a separate video. I'll be honest, I keep flip-flopping between them. I think if I had to choose right now, while I'm recording, I would probably say Velocicoaster. Just. But ask me tomorrow and my answer might be different. And then moving on from Klugheim, we go into Berlin, which I suppose is almost like the main entrance to the park. Just as a little kind of side note, there are multiple entrances to the park. So you have the entrance in Berlin, which looks like it's kind of the main one. Then you have a couple at the back in Mystery and China. But then when you actually look at Berlin, it's kind of almost split into two different lands as well. You have kind of the main Berlin area where there's like, the big plaza and there's a ride there, like Wellenflug, I think it is. It's the swings on the chains and then they've got fountains underneath. It looks really, really good. That big plaza, basically everyone sits there. They all have like picnics and, they sell Bratwurst and things like that. Great stuff. They also have the ride Mouse au Chocolat, which I absolutely loved, to be honest. My daughter loved it. My littlest, it was a bit loud for him. He's only kind of 2, so he could go on it, but he didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. Mouse au Chocolat is basically identical to Toy Story Mania from Disney Hollywood Studios, although I do have to say that this opened first, so it was kind of before that one. You kind of go around and you're basically shooting mice with bags of chocolate icing. Really, really well done. It's definitely longer than Toy Story Mania, and I think, to be honest, I prefer this. Seems a bit more fun. And then you walk down the streets of Berlin and you've got this fantastic, massive carousel. First time I've ever seen anything like it. It's a double-decker carousel, which means you can get so many people on. There's basically never really a queue for it. The only queue is just waiting for it to stop and then, let people on and off. So because of that, you can basically sit on there and not get off and you just keep riding around. They've got kind of horses, they've got teacups, carriages. But a really cool thing that I saw is they've got benches on there. So if you want to just go on and have a sit down and just enjoy the view, it's perfect. It's like a wonderful idea. And then this area also has, quite a lot of smaller kids rides. So you've got the, sorry, I can't remember all the names of these because they're all in German. I will put them on the screen. But, you've got the ride with the little planes and zeppelins. My little one absolutely loved that. Kept going on it again and again and again. I got dizzy after a while. It's like a teeny tiny Ferris wheel. Again, amazing for kids. And then if you go back down the street of Berlin and take a left, you go into Rookburgh. And I genuinely think that this is one of the best themed areas in any theme park on the planet. It's like old-fashioned steampunk, done fantastically well. It's all enclosed in, so it looks like you're in a courtyard of buildings, and you have F.L.Y. It's the world's first flying launch coaster, and it just looks incredible. Not just the ride, the entire land, it's all like black and gold, and there's like literally steam coming out of the manholes, and it spurts out as some of the ride vehicles come round. It's just absolutely stunning. This is something that I'd seen, again, kind of on YouTube and other places, Hotel Charles Lindbergh, and, you get a view so you can see the ride and, everything. But seeing it in person is so much more impressive. You just don't get a sense of the true scale of it and the quality of it. Absolutely phenomenal. And I feel like what I'm going to say next is going to upset people. But I was really disappointed with F.L.Y. Now, it didn't help that the first time I went on it, I made an absolute hash of getting on it. So obviously, the 4 of us went. So there's me, my wife, my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old. My 5-year-old and 2-year-old obviously can't go on it. But they do baby switch. So the way that works is one of you goes and queues up like normal, ride the ride. After the ride, you then go and see someone on the way out and basically say, I want to do baby switch. And they give you a quick pass ticket to come back. Absolutely fine. That wasn't the problem. The problem was purely me. It's all my fault. I'm taking 100% responsibility for this. But I went in the queue. The queue said 40 minutes. A lot of that was just walking around the massive queue. And then it got to the stage where the queue actually sort of started. So I was in the queue for a few minutes, and then I came to the bit where I could queue for the front row, or rows 2 to 10 or 2 to 8, whatever it was. At that point, you're going down like a circular, like a curved set of steps, so you can't see what's there. And I was stood there for a minute and just thought, there's no one in this single rider queue at all. Should I risk it? I was like, I don't want to leave my wife for a long period of time, really. You know, we were thinking 40 minutes, that's okay. She can go and do some kids' rides. I don't want to then, be ages. And I was like, no, do you know what? I'm going to risk it for a biscuit. Went down, walked down, seemed to be walking for ages. I thought, oh, do you know what? This was a good shout. Came down to the bottom, went round the corner and saw a little sign with some people stood maybe 4 or 5 feet in front of it. And the sign said, your estimated wait from this point is 100 minutes. And I just thought, oh no, this was a bad call. And I sort of stood there for a couple of minutes just debating, do I just go back to the back of the queue and get in, or do I sit here and wait? The other thing with this is that I had decided to leave all of my worldly possessions with my wife because the sign says you can't have a phone, you can't have anything in your pockets, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I've got no way to tell them anything. And after a few minutes, I thought, no, do you know what? This isn't going to happen. Let me go back up. I'll just join the regular queue again. And I went back up and the queue went back for miles. And the problem was everyone was German. And it was like, I don't speak German. Literally, the amount of German I speak consists of counting like 1 to 10, like hello, goodbye. I kept forgetting what excuse me was. And I could basically say, ich spreche keine Deutsch, which means I don't speak German. So to try and come back up and then persuade someone to let me in was just not going to happen. And I just sort of did like the walk of shame back to a point where there was a little gap in the queue and I just hopped in there. So, I added probably another, 15 minutes onto my queue there. Managed to get down to the actual bottom of the queue, and then I found out, oh, there's lockers. So, oh, great. So I could have had my phone and everything on me. I got a wristband and I thought, oh, I don't really need one. I've not got anything. Went to the lockers, ignored the lockers, went through to the security checkpoint. The machine bleeped. I got like a wand done all over me to find it, and my pocket beeped. And I thought, the only thing I've got in there is my room key in a zipped inside pocket. Zipped it down because they wanted to see it. And that was it. They sent me back to go back to the lockers. Like, you literally can't have anything. So genuinely, if you go there, put 100% of everything into the locker, because I had to then go back to the end of the locker queue. And I followed some instructions from someone who didn't speak English. I somehow managed to get disorientated in there and ended up at the exit. I think I went through a door I wasn't supposed to. Put something in a locker there and then went back through the doors I wasn't supposed to go through and joined the end of some sort of queue that wasn't the same one that I joined before. And I'm thinking, where am I? I don't know if I'm even queuing up for the right thing here. Anyway, massively long story short, I managed to get on the ride, but it probably wasted another 35 minutes of me faffing around. So I wasn't in the best of moods when I got on the ride. The start of the ride and the loading bay is absolutely fantastic. I love it. You sit, obviously, you sit in sideways rather than the style of like Galactica where you sit in like an inverted one and then it, moves you back into that position. This kind of, you sit down in a normal seat sideways and then it kind of rotates you around as you go up. Really, really clever. I love that. The ride just didn't seem to do much for me. Like, yeah, it was intense, And I'll be honest, there's only one bit of the ride that I sort of really enjoyed, and that was the second launch. You then go up and down, and you get like a lot of airtime there. Apart from that, I just wasn't a fan. And I'm not saying it was bad. It was just, I think with the theming that was there and all the build up to it, it should have been better than it was. It just didn't have anything that made me go, wow. And I was talking to my wife a little bit later about this, and she said, oh, do you think it's because, you know, you had all the faff with getting on it, and it's that's actually caused, me to not particularly, be enamoured with it? I said, possibly. So I gave it a go on the last day, and it was like, it was better, but I just genuinely slightly disappointed with it. I thought that was going to be the standout one, whereas Taron was actually the standout one for me. I thought F.L.Y was going to do it, and it just didn't. And then moving on to the last land, which is Fantasy, there is so much in this land. I spent such a long time here as well. There is a lot dedicated to young kids. So this is kind of almost like I suppose it's a bit like the CBeebies land of it, but they have thrown in some bigger rides as well. There's kind of a lot of small kiddie flat rides, that you might find at somewhere like Twin Lakes. They're absolutely fantastic. I've never waited for those apart from, the next cycle. Hopping Frog was my little boy's absolute favourite. He loved that one. And then you go into sort of a very strange building and it's like a massive adventure play for kids on one side. And then the other side, it's got this ride, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's called the Tittle Tattle Tree, which the name is fantastic anyway. But it's like 6 gondolas, and they kind of alternate going up and down. And it's like a really tame drop tower that you just stand in, and anyone can go on it. And again, my little lad absolutely loved it. He'd giggle on the way up, scream on the way down, every single time. Absolutely wonderful. But then also in the building is Winger's Fear and Force. It's a bit like Spinball Whizzer, except there's 2 of them. There's one for fear and one for force. There's a lot of bits in the dark, but it kind of goes around the building. It's a really good idea. I did prefer fear to force, but they are very similar, to be honest. You could get away with just riding one, to be honest, if you were really pushed for time. And each of the rides has I don't want to say secret, but they've got like a hidden bit that's a bit of a surprise. So I won't ruin that for anyone, but they are different. So it is worth kind of going on. Really cool though. And then also in that building, there is actually a soft play on the very top level. And then there's also like a teeny tiny little teacup ride called the Duck Washer. And there's, believe it or not, there's some dodgems up there as well. So absolutely fantastic area for kids. And then as you come out of that, there is a ride which I was not bothered about at all, called Crazy Bats. And it's basically a family VR coaster. Now, I am the person who gets travel sick wherever I go. If I'm not driving, I get travel sick pretty much. I've got a ride in the front. So for me, VR has always been terrible. I've only tried it on 2 roller coasters before, and I just gave up after that. One was Kraken. They had a stint with VR in SeaWorld Orlando. And the other one was Galactica when it got rebranded from Air to Galactica. Again, it just made me feel sick after a few seconds, so I just closed my eyes. With this one, I actually had a quick pass from a baby switch, so I was intending on not having the VR headset on. But I actually did in the end, because I thought that it was going to be a bit like the VR headsets that have been on these other ones, where they're kind of, big cables coming out and they're very, very clunky, very, almost like attached to the vehicle. But these aren't. These are all just completely loose and wireless. Absolutely brilliant. I gave it a go and thought, worst comes to worst, I can close my eyes. My wife, who went on it before, she couldn't wear the VR goggles because she was looking after my daughter. And she said the inside is just pitch black. You can't see anything anyway, so you might as well just close your eyes. So I thought, I'll give it a go. And you know what? It worked really well. I think it's because it wasn't too intense or like a flying coaster. I think they really disorientated me. But this, I managed to watch the whole VR throughout the whole thing. I thought the actual video for it was good. It tied in with the motion very, very well. There's a few bits that was like, yeah, but to be honest, there's only so much that you can do on a cartoon where you're constantly going down effectively. But very, very good. The sound was great. The cartoon was great. Really, really impressed with it, believe it or not. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic ride for kids and anyone, to be honest. Even I enjoyed it, and I get travel sick at the thought of going in a car. And then the last area, which is kind of the only bit of real, I don't want to say wasted space, but it's the only bit where the space isn't used fantastically well, was there's like a big lake outside in Fantasy, and there's some like pedalo boats and a I can't even think what they're called, but like a squirting boat ride called Wacko Bato. But I'm guessing at different times of the year they turn the water off because none of the water worked for us. So it was literally a very slow journey around the lake, which even my 5-year-old daughter said that she was bored of waiting for something to happen about halfway around. I think that's the only area of the park where I would love to see them do something with. I think that's about the only place they've got expansion room to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that gets done, at some point in the next few years. So I'm just going to go back and mention the hotel. So Hotel Matamba, which is the African theme one, that was absolutely fantastic. First of all, I've got to say, and this is high praise, when I walked in there, I think that is the best smelling hotel I've ever been in. I think it beats, some of these Disney hotels. To be fair, I've not been in a Universal hotel, but honestly, that smell is absolutely fantastic. The theming in the hotel is absolutely wonderful. Everything was absolutely spotlessly clean. Just great. We had a balcony room because it was ever so slightly bigger, but also it faces the theme park. So when we look out of the window, we can literally see Black Mamba. My plan was, I could come back, one afternoon or, early in the morning, just sit out there with a coffee and just watch the roller coasters go around. And I never got time for that at all. But just the uniqueness of being able to look out of your hotel window and see roller coasters is so strange. And to be honest, it wasn't much more money. So I'd say that was definitely worth it. I am going to put up a separate video of a hotel room review for that. A bit more in depth about what's in there and what's not. Just quick things for anyone who's interested, for the next 20 seconds. There's a bit of a lack of plug sockets. There's no USB ports. There's no fridge. There's nowhere to actually put your clothes. There's no real drawers or anything, but fantastic room. Absolutely brilliant. Going on to breakfast. It's a buffet breakfast in there, and the breakfast was brilliant. So it kind of does a bit of a mixture of like traditional buffet breakfast things with, things like sausages and bacon and eggs and things like that. But then also has like traditional German things. So, you get the meats and the cheeses, yogurts, things like that. But then you also get an omelette station. So, they'll cook all the omelettes up for you. You just order what you want and they'll do it for you. But they also do African inspired things. So like the baked beans are like African baked beans and they're all spicy, and there's some really nice and interesting foods in there. I did try and take some videos of some of it, but I'll be honest, food time with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, I just gave up after a while. I did also have dinner in there. The dinner was very good. It's like a barbecue kind of dinner. So again, you have your staples of German things, kind of international things, and then African things. So they do things like beef steak, they do buffalo, zebra, kangaroo, ostrich. They've got loads of different things that they have on different days. Very, very good, the evening buffet. Having said that, we also did the buffet at Hotel Lingbao, which is obviously like a Chinese buffet, and found that very disappointing in comparison. It didn't help that we went there and our 2-year-old was asleep at 6:30, and they wouldn't let us take the double buggy because they said there wasn't room. However, when we went in there were tables where you could easily get a double buggy in the window, and it was like they just didn't want to give us those tables, so you can't take them in. So it meant we had to wake up a 2-year-old, which is obviously going to go fantastically well when they've been asleep for 20 minutes. I thought the food was, on the whole, pretty disappointing. There was a few good bits, like they had some sashimi, which was really good. They had like an ice cream station where a guy was, literally making ice cream out of milk and whatever you wanted in it. I thought that was really good. The Vietnamese section was pretty good. The rest of it was just a bit disappointed. They had a station where you go and have all your noodle things made up, and they do it all posh while you wait and exactly what you want. And the idea of that sounds fantastic. However, when I went, there was probably 5 people waiting for food and another 6 people waiting to get done. And it was like, well, I kind of want some food today, so I'm just going to ignore that and go away from it. One thing to note, actually, that all the buffets, whether it's breakfast, dinner, or whatever, they all have a dedicated kids zone. So in the kids zone, it's like chicken nuggets, fish fingers, chips, like jelly, just things that anyone, would eat. So if you do have a footy eater with you, just go in the kids bit and get some chips and chicken nuggets if that's what you want. Be aware that the buffet dinner is not cheap. I think it's €43 each. So if 2 of you go, you end up spending €100 and you might have just had chicken and chips. So just bear that in mind. And kind of on the subject of food, when you look at the food in the park, I mean, it wasn't particularly expensive really for theme park food, but the quality was fantastic. I'll tell you what, one of the best things that they did in each of the lands, they have slushy stations, and you buy either a cup or, a souvenir long yard mug thing, but you put in what flavours you want. How awesome's that? You give that to a kid, boom, it was like, what, €4 or €5? And that's them shut up for half an hour. So the food in the park is so nice. I had a couple of really good things. One was the bunny chow from Africa, and it was basically like a sub roll with like an African stew, a bit like chili in it. Just absolutely jam packed, like really filling. And that was like, what, €9, I think? That was really, really good. I'll tell you what, one of the absolute standout things for me was in Berlin, they sell Bratwurst and currywurst, and it's like €5. Like, how can you possibly go wrong with that? It is the nicest sausage I've ever had. And I'll be honest, I had a lot of sausages on this trip. That one was the best. We also went and saw a show. There's a couple of shows that they've got on. So they've got Nobis, which is in Berlin, and that's kind of it's like a bit of a more traditional artsy kind of show. They have Rock on Ice, which is basically an ice dancing show with rock music. I did want to go to that one, but I didn't get a chance, to be honest. The one that we went to watch was Battle of the Best. So it's a little bit like, kind of think of it as like West Side Story with like rival gangs, only they're doing like action tricks and dance moves. So it's kind of like basketball and trampolining and breakdancing, all done to like hip hop music. I think I enjoyed it a lot because it's all music from my era, and it makes me sound really old. But the kids loved it because it was gymnastics and things like that they've just never seen real people do before. So really, really worth going to. It's kind of, half an hour long. The only thing to make note of is they won't let you go in late. So once the doors are closed, that's it for the show. You have to skip it and go to the next one. So do you know what? My overall thoughts on the park is that it is very, very family friendly. Everyone there seems so nice. One other thing about Phantasialand is it's like the pace that people move around the park. I think when you look in, some of the English parks like Thorpe Park, Alton Towers, there's always people running around and, I've got to run to the next ride and, get out my way and things like that. And that just doesn't seem to exist in Phantasialand. In fact, it's something I noticed around Cologne and, around like just Germany in general. No one seems to be in a rush. Like even the roads, when there's traffic, there's no real road rage. Everyone just kind of, bumbles along as they would. And it took me a day or so to get used to, because normally I'm the person that's kind of running around and like, get out my way. And obviously I never say anything, but it's just, I'm quite a fast walker anyway. So I'd always be that person that's, kind of not necessarily weaving in and out of people, but, I'll pick a line and walk past and overtake. That just doesn't happen here at all. Everyone kind of goes their own pace, and that's it. One thing I did notice is that having the double buggy, you take up a lot of room. And in England, people would move out of your way. Here, they do, but they do it so nonchalantly. Like, they'll move, you'll miss them by what seems like millimetres, but they'll always get out the way. The other thing that I noticed, and again, it seemed to be a thing across Germany, but sort of really highlighted in this park, was that people will just stop in the middle of the road. They'll stop and block entrances without a second thought. And like, if you walk up to them and they see you, they don't sort of say, "Oh, sorry," and move out of the way. They just carry on. This is, and you have to go around them like you've inconvenienced yourself because they've moved into, the way of everyone else. And, people aren't doing it to be rude. It's literally just a cultural thing, but it just takes a little bit of a mindset tweak to get on the same page. And to be fair, once you do, it's fine. I just stopped rushing. And I was just like, I'm going to go my pace. I'm going to walk here. I'm going to go here. And people will move out the way. And they do. So Alton Towers is my home park. How does Phantasialand compare with Alton Towers? And that is a massive question. It's also one I'm going to be annoying and not answer on this video because I am going to do that as a separate video. I think there's so many similarities between the park, but the execution of how they've gone around and solved different problems is very, very different. I think there's a lot that both parks could learn from each other. I would definitely recommend Phantasialand to anyone who's into theme parks. I think it's one of the most beautiful theme parks I've been to, including the Disney and Universal parks. I think the actual theming of it, in terms of the lands and the consistency and the detail of the theming, is up there with the best of them. I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job. And just kind of speaking about, how pretty it is, the amount of real flowers they have in the park is incredible. We stumbled across some people, and I think they must have been making like a behind the scenes documentary because they had a presenter and a crew there, and they were looking at the gardeners, and there's just scores of gardeners, and they're just like, replacing all these flowers. And obviously I know Disney do it overnight and everything, but it seemed like because Disney do it on a scale that is just almost unfathomable. Unfathomable?
Kind of power?
Unfathomable. It's without fathom.
Whatever that word is, you kind of don't appreciate it. But when you see it on a bit of a smaller scale, more relatable, it seems like a much more impressive task, if that makes sense. But it's just another example of how they go kind of like above and beyond for stuff that they don't need to do. If you haven't been to Phantasialand, definitely do it. I think if you've got kids, do what we did. Go for 3 nights and you'll make sure that you can see everything. We did a lot of things a lot of times, and we kind of half went for the kids anyway, so there was a lot of time spent on kids rides and they absolutely loved it. But you know what, if you come in by yourself or just a couple, I'd say maybe 1 night, maybe 2 nights, and then just mix it with another park, like Efteling or Europa Park. I will 100% come back to Phantasialand. I think it's probably not going to be for a little while because there's a lot of other things that I want to do, a lot of places I want to go. But I think when I do come back, it'll be an age where the kids can go on pretty much everything. And to be honest, I think a stay in Hotel Charles Lindbergh might be on the cards, unless there's something new and fantastic, that they've built in the meantime. But I would like to stay there. I'm into kind of steampunk and things like that, so I think it'd be one to tick off the bucket list for that one. So that's all I have on Phantasialand for today. So if you do want to see my comparison between Phantasialand and Alton Towers, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. And obviously, there'll be more Phantasialand videos popping up. So I've got some good videos of Talakan and Taron and things. So I'm going to be putting some, bits and bobs together and the room review. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on those. And as the Germans would say, Auf Wiedersehen and Tschüss.